My ex-boyfriend is loaded, so I became a sim for the cash. I kissed his ass. Diligently every single day, right up. Until a two-faced pick-me girl stepped in. On the day we broke up, I cautiously asked, "Hey, about that condo you gave." "Me? Can you just get the hell out of here?" He snapped. He was annoyed. It was a scorching hot day. I obeyed, clutching the deed to the condo, and ran away as fast as my legs could carry me. Ever since elementary school, I was a total doormat for money. My desk, made back then, was filthy rich. His desk drawer literally stuffed with loose bills. I ran errands for the little rich boy every day, $5 a pop. I was so money hungry. I even escorted him to the bathroom to make an extra buck. At a young age, my piggy bank was overflowing. Eventually, the rich kid transferred schools, but the stash I saved up got me through my childhood. In middle school, I ran a little side hustle. I'd hit up the corner store during lunch, pack my backpack full of snacks, and sell them at a markup to the kids in my class between periods. My best customer was a girl named Harper. She was a preppy, flawless girl who got hundreds of dollars a day in allowance. I still don't understand her mindset. Back then, every recess she'd buy dozens of dollars worth of snacks for me. She wouldn't even eat them. She just bought them to pass around for fun. When the empty wrappers littered the floor, she'd pay me $20 to sweep them up. I was incredibly hardworking back then, buzzing around the rich girl day in and day out. Honestly, most students have zero concept of money. So I made a killing on my best days. I could clear $300. Student money is always easier to make than real world money. People who haven't tasted absolute rock bottom don't realize how important cash is. As for me, no mom, no dad. I grew up in the foster system, so I was street smart from day one, constantly scheming on how to secure the bag. When I got to college, I grinded hard to make a living. I worked my fingers to the bone until I met Tristan. He was a trust fund baby on steroids, spent money like water, and was an absolute god. Sent for my wallet. What kind of guy was Tristan? A brilliant art major whose family owned a massive real estate empire. A total golden boy. How did we meet? It was a campus RA, and this was the 12th time I'd caught him skipping class. His academic advisor looked at the attendance sheet furious. So what if he's rich? Look, don't clear his name from this list. Let the penalty stand. Since the advisor gave the word, I kept my mouth shut and kept marking him absent. Finally, right before the holidays, he sought me out. He asked me what the deal was. I carefully replied, "I'm sorry. I don't really have a choice here. If there's no choice, invent one." He leaned back on the sofa, looking at me with pure irritation. Later, I actually did invent a way for him. I ran around campus with a golden boy, pulled a few strings, and got the issue resolved. He was extremely satisfied with my bootlicking, probably because he was in a good mood and because I looked tragically broke. He casually tossed me a designer gold chain, a $30,000 piece of jewelry. I pledged my highest allegiance to the golden boy on the spot, texting him good morning and good night like clockwork. Then one day he asked if I was trying to hit on him. I cautiously replied, "Are you annoyed by my texts? I can stop sending them." He Didn't reply. A long time passed before a message popped up. Your name is Riley, right? Yes. Cute cat sticker attached. You know Harper, right? The popular girl. I do. She flunked a final. Understood. I'll ask around the registrar's office for you over the next couple of days. Cool. Thanks. Tristan truly lived up to his status. Right. Below that text was a Venmo transfer. $5,000. I didn't hesitate. I accepted the money and immediately sent back a wildly grateful reaction meme. Probably. Because I took so much of his money. In the beginning, the phrase Tristan said to me the most when we eventually started dating was, Riley, could you stop being such a gold digger? I never defended myself. After all, I was a gold digger. I kept every single dollar. He transferred me from the very start. I was never in it for him. How did Tristan and I actually start dating? It all goes back to Harper. Harper and I actually had a lot of history. Same middle school, same high school, and we both got into the same university. But once college started, our majors were completely different, so we rarely spoke. If we bumped into each other, we'd say hi, but that was the extent of it until one night in the dead of winter, Tristan called me. He asked if I had a ride. I said yes. He said he was wasted and couldn't drive. He shot me a Venmo payment and told me to come pick him up. In the middle of the night, I rolled up on my beat-up bike. The golden boy took one look at me and couldn't hold back a laugh. First time I've ever been on a moped. Do you want me to call you an Uber instead? Nah. Cars make me nauseous right now. The moped is fine. The fresh air will help. I picked him up, but before we even got back to campus, the alcohol took over. He started crying, softly mumbling into the wind. She rejected me. First time I've ever confessed to a girl, and she rejected me. Tristan looked so incredibly pathetic in the night breeze. Eventually, he just wrapped his arms around my waist, rested his head against my back, and fell asleep. I stiffened. I was only paid for a pickup, getting treated like a body pillow cost extra. When I finally parked the bike, Tristan confessed to me. He didn't say it out loud. He just transferred me $20,000 with the memo, be my girlfriend. I gritted my teeth and accepted it. When I looked up, Tristan saw the transfer go through, shoved his phone into his pocket, and walked into his frat house, completely satisfied. I stood outside in the freezing wind before it finally dawned on me. The golden boy wasn't confessing his love. He was just humiliated from being rejected, and he was using me as a rebound to stroke his ego. I stared at the balance in my banking app under the streetlights. The longer I looked, the wider I smiled. I went home and slept like a baby. I had a boyfriend, but the only person who knew was Tristan. He didn't tell anyone, and neither did I. Occasionally, he'd Venmo me with a note meet followed by an address. I'd happily rush over. It was great. Not only did I get paid, but I also scored a free meal. Sometimes it was just the two of us. Tristan would book a private room and eat at a Les Urli Pace. He was used to the finer things in life, completely unhurried. He also couldn't stand seeing me scarf down my food. If I inhaled 3 bites at once, he'd raise an eyebrow, drink some soup, take a sip from the tiny bowl look up to make sure he was satisfied, and then get right back to devouring my meal. If it was a group dinner, I'd drain it in. I'd sit quietly, taking small, polite bites. If someone spoke to me, I'd look up, smile, and answer their questions. When they stopped asking, I went back to eating. People told me I seemed so sweet and well-behaved, telling me to make myself at home. I just smile and nod. As for being well-behaved, I really can't judge. All I can say is if you grew up in the foster system, you'd be just as well-behaved as me. I stayed in my lane. When my birthday rolled around, Tristan told me to come celebrate. So I went. We were on his family's massive yacht. The ocean breeze felt incredible. I closed my eyes to make a wish, leaned back on the lounge chair, and lazily interrupted. If you want something, just say it out loud. Why keep it in your head? I hesitated for a second before bluntly saying, I want a house. Tristan raised an eyebrow. Funny you say that. My family literally builds houses. Congrats. Your wish align with my inventory. I'll take you to get the deed transferred in a few days. I leaned back, casually scrolling through his phone. He promised it so effortlessly that my heart pounded, but I didn't dare ask if he was serious. I just cut myself a piece of cake and sat beside him. The sunset over the marina was gorgeous, and the frosting was so sweet. For a brief, crazy second, I turned my head. I wanted to kiss him. I didn't care about the house anymore. I could always save up and buy my own eventually. In that exact moment, I just really wanted to kiss him, but I didn't say a word, and I didn't move. He kept scrolling out of sheer boredom until he played an audio message. I didn't catch what the boy said, but he frowned immediately. Let's go. We're heading back. It was getting dark. He had an emergency and left. I grabbed a ride share back to my dorm, only to find out that Harper had passed out from low blood sugar and was rushed to the ER. I leaned over my roommate's shoulder and saw a photo someone had taken at the hospital. Tristan was standing right by Harper's bed. Suddenly, I remembered the slice of cake I never finished. I stood there for a long time, finally let out a yawn, took my phone, and climbed into bed for the next few days. Tristan was busy, and I didn't bother texting him. It wasn't until the day Harper got discharged that Tristan finally messaged me inviting me out a weekend camping trip. He sent the money, so I happily packed my little duffel bag and went. When I arrived, I realized they brought 2 subs, exactly 8 people. I was the odd 9th wheel. I froze. Everyone was already in their seats, dead silent. The awkwardness hit me like a truck, but I was already there. I couldn't exactly turn around and walk away without making it worse. Tristan looked at me, frowned, and then glanced toward the park shuttle carts nearby. Harper reached out and grabbed my arm. Come on in. We can. Squeeze. There was a tiny bit of space in her row, but she had just gotten out of the hospital and clearly still looked weak. I immediately shook my head. I'll just take the shuttle cart. It goes to the same place. Harper looked at me. Our eyes met, and after a long silence, she finally let go of my arm. Their cars drove off. I sat alone in the pavilion. It wasn't tourist season, so the park was completely deserted, just me sitting there by myself. I waited a long time before the cart finally arrived. By the time I made it to the peak, it was pretty late. The group had already started the cookout. I'd only had dinner with them once or twice. I found a quiet corner and sat there from noon straight through the afternoon. Tristan was grilling. Occasionally someone would hand me a skewer. The scenery was beautiful. Once I was half full, I decided to go for a walk to look around. I told Tristan I was heading out. He seemed preoccupied with something and didn't even look at me, just giving a dismissive grunt. The mountain air was crisp because of my time in the group. Home. I rarely got the chance to just wander in nature. I walked for almost an hour, figuring they'd be wrapping up lunch by now, so I headed back, but things didn't go as expected. I stared at the completely empty campsite. In that split second, I realized it's impossible for a person to not feel a little heartbroken. It was already dusk. The shuttle carts had stopped running. My only option was to walk down the mountain. The sun dipped below the horizon, and I was alone in the wilderness. Halfway down, my phone died. I kept walking in dead silence. This trail felt exactly like the road I took when I ran away from the foster home. As a little kid, the same dim light, the same blurring surroundings, slowly dissolving into pitch black, suffocating darkness. I couldn't find my way home, and my dad wasn't coming back for me. I looked around in sheer terror and started running. The moonlight filtered through the trees onto the dirt path. I was terrified. I screamed at the top of my lungs. Kirsten. The echo bounced through the mountains, sending a chilling shiver down my spine. I walked for the entire night, and I was terrified for the entire night. When dawn finally broke, I found a bus driver at a transit stop who let me charge my phone. He took one look at my disheveled state and jumped. Were you out here all night? Why didn't you call 911? I held up my phone, forgot to check the battery. It died. A sweetheart, you can't come hiking all by yourself. At least bring a boyfriend or some friends. I did bring one, or maybe he didn't count as one after all. Yeah, I'll remember that. Thanks so much, sir. I turned my phone on to see a text Tristan had sent me last night. He said they were heading out first and told me to get home safe. I let out a bitter laugh, leaned my exhausted body against the bus window, and fell asleep. Tristan still called me out to eat every few days. One day he apparently remembered his birthday promise, actually transferred the deed of a condo into my name. It wasn't massive, 3 bedrooms, never been lived in for Tristan. It was probably just spare inventory he kept around for loose gifts. Day I got the deed, I was just as ecstatic as I always was about cash. I happily inspected every inch of my new little home. Tristan couldn't understand it. It's just a small condo. You really like it that much? I nodded solemnly. You just don't get it? I was still the campus RA. When I didn't have class, I'd check in for Tristan's courses. His only demand was that if he skipped, he didn't want to hear about any disciplinary issues. I took Tristan's demand about his attendance very seriously. Disciplinary issues meant a paper trail, and a paper trail meant his father's family lawyers getting involved. If his family stepped in, they would inevitably audit his expenses, which would dry up my personal cash flow in a heartbeat. So I became the ultimate ghost writer of academic records. During his lectures, I'd sit in the back of the massive auditorium, wearing a generic gray hoodie, holding 2 different clickers for the digital attendance system. On days when the professor required physical sign-ins, I'd wait until the end of the class, slip into the crowd, and sign his name in a perfect imitation of his messy, artistic scribble. I had practiced his signature on a napkin during our first date while he was busy complaining about his existential dread. To me, his signature wasn't art. It was a key to a vault. When a particularly strict professor, Dr. Advance, decided to do random verbal roll calls, I had to get creative. I paid a quiet Broke Theater major $50 a class to sit in the middle row and shout present in a deep, nonchalant voice whenever Tristan's name was called. Dr. Vance was nearly blind and never looked up from his clipboard. Anyway, it was a seamless operation. I paid out $50, pocketed the remaining $450 from Tristan's weekly academic assistant stipend, and kept the Golden Boy slate spotlessly clean. Meanwhile, my new condo became my sanctuary. It was located on the 16th floor of a newly developed high-rise, just 10 minutes from campus. When I first got the keys, I spent 3 hours just sitting on the bare hardwood floor, staring out the floor to ceiling windows at the city skyline. For someone who had spent her entire childhood moving from one crowded, noisy foster home to another where my only private space was a squeaky bunk bed and a plastic bin. Under it, this place felt impossibly, beautifully massive. I didn't buy fancy furniture. I didn't want to waste the cash Tristan was sending me. Instead, I browsed online forums for graduating students selling their things cheap. I bought a sturdy wooden dining table for $20, a slightly faded but clean gray sofa for $50, and a simple mattress that I kept directly on the floor. My favorite spot was the kitchen. It was modern with sleek white countertops and a shiny stainless steel refrigerator. I kept that fridge stocked with basic groceries, but my favorite thing to look at was a small ceramic piggy bank I placed right in the center of the kitchen island. Every time Tristan Venmo'd me for some trivial errand, I'd transfer a portion of it to a high-yield savings account, print out the monthly statement, and slide it under the piggy bank. To me, those paper statements were more beautiful than any piece of art Tristan had ever painted. The piece, however, didn't last. It started during the spring semester of our senior year. Harper, who had spent the last 3 years keeping her distance, suddenly started showing up in Tristan's social orbit. Again, I first noticed it during a weekend gathering at a trendy rooftop lounge. Tristan had paid for a VIP table to celebrate one of his frat brothers' birthdays. I was sitting quietly in my usual spot, taking small, polite bites of the expensive imported cheese platter, when the elevator doors slid open and Harper walked in. She looked effortless. She was wearing a simple silk slip dress that probably cost more than my entire semester's tuition, her long hair falling in perfect glossy waves. The moment she entered the atmosphere at the table shifted. Tristan's eyes locked onto her, his glass of whiskey freezing halfway to his mouth. Harper, one of the guys, called out, "I thought you were skipping tonight to work on your thesis." Harper gave a soft, delicate laugh, waving her hand dismissively. Oh, but Tristan texted me saying the view tonight was too beautiful to miss. I couldn't resist. My gaze flicked to Tristan. His cheeks were slightly flushed, but he quickly covered it with a smirk. Justin didn't want you locking yourself in the studio all weekend. Harp, you need fresh air. You're so sweet, Harper cooped. She walked over, her eyes scanning the table until they landed on me. A look of manufactured surprise crossed her face. Oh, Riley, I didn't realize you'd be here. I go where the food is, I said, simply offering a polite, empty smile. Harper giggled, though her eyes remained entirely cold. She sat down directly next to Tristan, leaning her shoulder against his. It's so good to see you. Riley, it feels like just yesterday we were back in middle school. Do you remember when you used to sweep up my snack wrappers for 20 bucks? Honestly, you were always so industrious. I've always admired how practical you are. The table went quiet. A few of Tristan's friends looked uncomfortable, but Tristan himself didn't say a word. He was too busy staring at the side of Harper's face. Business is business. Harper, I replied, taking a slow sip of my water. And you are an excellent customer. If you ever need your apartment swept, my rates have adjusted for inflation, but I'm always open to offers. Harper's smile stiffened for a fraction of a second before she laughed it off. Oh, I'm sure Tristan keeps you far too busy for that now. She turned her attention to Tristan, lowering her voice to a soft, intimate murmur. Tristan, did you see the new gallery exhibit downtown? The one with the abstract watercolor pieces. It made me think of your early work. For the rest of the night, I was completely ignored. Tristan and Harper spoke in hushed, animated whispers about art, philosophy, and mutual childhood friends. I sat there quietly calculating the cost of the food I was consuming to make sure I got my time's worth. By the time we left, I had eaten about $80 worth of oysters and Wagyu beef slides. I considered it a successful evening, but Harper wasn't just catching up. She was executing a very deliberate, very subtle campaign. She had spent years rejecting Tristan because she enjoyed the thrill of being chased. But now that Tristan had a girlfriend, even one as low profile as me, she couldn't handle the loss of her most devoted admirer. She began transforming into what I could only describe as a professional pick-me. She started showing up at Tristan's art studio on campus, wearing oversized, paint-splattered flannels and tying her hair back in messy buns. She'd sit on his counter drinking cheap beer from Ken, pretending she was just one of the guys who hated the shallow, materialistic culture of university life. I honestly don't get girls who care so much about designer bags and fancy dinners. I overheard her saying to Tristan one afternoon when I dropped off his dry cleaning at the studio. She was sitting on a stool, swinging her legs, looking up at him with wide, innocent eyes. Like, why would I want a guy to buy me a Gucci bag when we could just sit in the back of a pickup truck, look at the stars, and talk about our souls? Genuine connection is so rare these days. Everything is just so transactional. Tristan, who was working on a canvas, paused his brush. He looked at her like she was a saint who had descended from the heavens. Then his eyes flicked to me. I was standing near the door, holding his dry cleaning receipt in one hand and my phone in the other, waiting for him to transfer the $40 for the errand. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. There was Harper, the pure, high-minded muse who cared only for souls. And there was Riley, the greedy doormat who was waiting for her $40. Tristan's expression cooled. He reached for his phone, tapped the screen, and I felt my pocket buzz. Thanks, I said, slipping my phone away. Your suits are in the closet. Let me know if you need anything else. Yeah, whatever, Tristan muttered, his tone dripping with irritation. Just leave. I didn't need to be told twice. I turned on my heel and walked out as the heavy wooden door of the studio swung shut. I heard Harper's soft, sighing voice. She's so efficient, Tristan, but don't you ever feel like she's more like your personal assistant than your partner? It must be exhausting always, having to pay for someone's presence. I paused in the hallway, staring at the closed door. Exhausting, I thought to myself. For him, maybe. For me, it's the most stable income stream I've ever had. I shrugged, walked down the stairs, and headed straight to the library to study. For my finals, over the next 2 months, Harper's subtle poison began to take full effect. Tristan became increasingly cold, distant, and easily annoyed with me. He stopped sending me meet me texts with addresses to nice restaurants. Instead, his messages became purely transactional commands. Drop off my laptop at the library, $50. Get my car washed, the premium package, $100. I accepted every single one of them. I didn't care about his attitude. In my mind, his growing resentment was just a market fluctuation. I had to maximize my profits before the bubble burst. The boiling point came on a scorching hot day in mid-July. The campus was virtually deserted for the summer semester. The air was thick and humid, the asphalt radiating a suffocating heat. I had walked over to Tristan's off-campus luxury apartment to deliver a set of finalized summer course registration papers. I had spent 3 days pulling strings at the administration office to ensure he didn't get dropped from his mandatory art history seminar. When I opened the door with my spare key, the blast of icy air conditioning was a relief, but the tension in the room immediately made my skin prickle. Harper was there. She was sitting on the kitchen counter wearing one of Tristan's oversized linen shirts. Had bara läxstångling. She was holding a delicate porcelain mug, sipping tea, with a look of profound, fragile sorrow. Tristan was pacing the living room floor, his hair disheveled, looking incredibly stressed. When the door clicked shut, both of them snapped their heads toward me. Riley, Tristan said, his voice tight and sharp. I brought the registration papers, I said, placing the neat folder on the entryway table. You're locked into the seminar. No disciplinary flags. Tristan didn't look at the folder. He stopped pacing and stared at me, his eyes dark with a mixture of anger and a strange defensive guilt. We need to end this, he said. Bluntly, I stood there, my hands still, resting on the strap of my backpack. I didn't blink. And what? Us, he said, gesturing vaguely between the two of us. The relationship, if you can even call it that. Harper let out a soft, trembling sigh from the counter. Riley, I'm so sorry. I try to tell him to wait, to find a gentler way to do this, but Tristan has been carrying this burden for so long. It's not fair to either of you to keep pretending. I ignored her completely, keeping my eyes locked on Tristan. Why? I asked, keeping my voice as flat and emotionless as possible. Tristan scoffed, his hands flying up in frustration. Why? Look at you, Riley. You don't even care. I just told you we're breaking up, and you don't have a single reaction. Your face is like a blank wall. Harper was right. You're not a girlfriend. You're a mercenary. I never pretended to be anything else, Tristan, I said quietly. That's exactly the problem, he shouted, his voice echoing in the high ceiling. Department. You've been using me from day one. Every text, every smile, every good morning. It all had a price tag. You let me leave you on that mountain because you knew a 3-bedroom condo was waiting for you at the end of it. You didn't care about my feelings. You didn't care about my art. You didn't care about me. You just wanted the bag. Harper walked over, wrapping a comforting hand around Tristan's arm. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and smug triumph. Riley, it's okay to admit it. You grew up with nothing, so you're obsessed with material things. We don't blame you, but Tristan deserves someone who loves his soul, not his bank account. Someone who can stand by him because of who he is, not what he can. Bye. I looked at Harper. Her performance was truly spectacular. She had successfully convinced a billionaire's son that her spiritual connection was worth more than my practical labor. But I didn't have time for a debate. My mind, sharp as a calculator, had already bypassed the emotional rejection and locked onto the single most important asset in play. I looked back at Tristan, my voice cautious measured. Hey, I said, my heart taking a steady, heavy beat about that condo you gave me. Are you serious? Tristan erupted, his face flushing a deep, angry red. He snatched a glass from the table and slammed it down, shattering it against the hardwood. A condo? We're breaking up. My heart is in pieces, and all you can ask about is a piece of real estate. It's a legal transfer. I pointed out, my voice tight. The deed is in my name. I just want to make sure we're clear on. Can you just get the hell out of here? He roared, his voice cracking with pure annoyance and disgust. Get out. Take the condo. Take your blood, money, and get out of my sight. I never want to see your face again. Beside him, Harper smirked a tiny, fleeting expression of victory that she quickly masked with a look of horror at Tristan's outburst. But I didn't care about her look, and I certainly didn't care about Tristan's broken heart. Understood, I said. I grabbed my backpack, spun around, and ran. The moment I hit the street, the blistering July heat wrapped around me like a furnace, but I didn't slow down. I clutched the strap of my bag where the physical deed to the condo was safely tucked away in a waterproof folder and ran as fast as my legs could carry me. I ran past the campus coffee shops, past the library, past the dorms where I had spent years counting pennies. My lungs burned and sweat poured down my neck, but a wild, hysterical laugh bubbled up in my chest. I had a condo, a 3-bedroom, unmortgaged, fully titled. condo in the heart of a city. At 22 years old, an orphan from the foster system had secured a piece of the earth that no one could ever kick her out of. I had won the transition from billionaire's girlfriend to independent property owner was remarkably smooth. The very next morning, I sat on the floor of my empty living room with my laptop and a cup of cheap instant coffee. I didn't waste a single second crying over Tristan. Instead, I opened a local housing rental portal. My condo had 3 bedrooms. I only needed one. I took high-quality photos of the 2 spare bedrooms, highlighting the modern bathrooms, the private balconies, and the proximity to the university's medical and engineering campuses. I set the rent at slightly below market rate, enough to attract serious, quiet graduate students who would pay on time and keep to themselves. Within 48 hours, my inbox was flooded. I carefully vetted the applicants. I didn't want party animals or drama queens. I chose Maya A. Quiet, hyper-focused chemistry PhD student who practically lived in her lab, and Chloe, a serious, soft-spoken accounting major who spent all her free time studying for her CPA exams. They moved in the following week. The place is so quiet, Maya remarked on her first day, looking around the minimalist living room. Is it always like this? Always, I promised her, handing over her keys. No parties, no loud music, just peace, quiet, and high speed. Internet, with their monthly rent, payments combined, I was not only covering the property taxes and HOA fees for the condo, but I was also generating a net positive cash flow of $1,200 a month. I lived in the smallest bedroom. My room had a mattress, a simple desk, a laptop, and a small clothing rack. Every morning, I'd wake up at 5 a.m., make myself a bowl of oatmeal, and look at my banking app. Numbers were steady. They were growing. They didn't lie. They didn't get angry. And they didn't leave me on mountains. But I knew I couldn't rely on Tristan's leftovers forever. The university. Graduation was looming, and I needed a real job. I applied for internships at every major financial institution in the city because I had spent my college years managing Tristan's academic crisis, negotiating with university administration, and running a profitable side hustle. My resume was surprisingly robust. During my interview at Harrison and Associates, a prestigious boutique wealth management firm, the hiring manager looked at my background with curiosity. Your academic records are excellent, Riley, he said, tapping his pen against my file. But I see you've also worked as a campus RA, managed student logistics, and what is this? Independent Student Services Liaison. It's a polite term for resolving high-stakes administrative crisis for high-worth students, I replied, honestly keeping my posture perfect. I specialize in conflict resolution, resource allocation, and delivering results under extreme pressure. The manager smiled. In this industry, we deal with incredibly demanding, wealthy clients who often behave like children. It sounds like you've already had 4 years of training. I have, I said, and I assure you, nothing a billionaire client throws at me will surprise me. I was hired on the spot. My starting salary was modest compared to Tristan's weekly allowance, but to me it was gold. It was clean, predictable, and earned through my own brain. Through myself. into the work, while the other interns complained about the 80-hour work weeks and the tedious spreadsheet analysis. I thrived. I was used to grinding. I was used to survival. Riley, you're always the first one here and the last to leave. My supervisor, Mr. Harrison, noted one evening as he passed my cubicle at 9 p.m., "Don't you have a social life?" My social life is highly correlated with my career progression. "Sir," I replied with a professional smile. He chuckled, shaking his head. "You're a rare breed. Keep it up." While my life was stabilizing into a neat, upward trajectory, Tristan and Harper's lives were beginning to take a very different turn because I was no longer around to manage Tristan's academic attendance. His carefully constructed house of cards quickly collapsed. Within 2 weeks of our breakup, Dr. Vance caught the theater major I had hired shouting, "Present" during roll call. The theater major, terrified of academic suspension, immediately sang like a canary. He pointed the finger at Tristan, admitting he had been paid to impersonate him. The university administration, which had turned a blind eye to Tristan's absences for years because of his family's donations, couldn't ignore a direct case of academic fraud involving a paid proxy. A formal disciplinary inquiry was launched. Tristan's father, a powerful, ruthless real estate tycoon who valued the family's reputation above all else, was furious. He flew into the city in his private jet, personally dragged Tristan out of his luxury apartment and forced him to attend a meeting with the dean. I heard about the details from my roommate Chloe, who worked part-time in the administration office. It was a complete disaster. Chloe told me over dinner one night, her eyes wide with excitement. Tristan's dad was screaming at him in the hallway. He told Tristan that if he couldn't even manage to pass a simple art history class without paying someone to fake his attendance, he wasn't fit to inherit a single dime of the family empire. He officially cut off Tristan's unlimited black card and put him on a strict monitored allowance. I took a bite of my broccoli, chewing thoughtfully. How strict? 3,000 a month, Chloe said. To us, that's a lot. But to Tristan, he pays more than that in rent alone for his luxury apartment. I let out a soft, appreciative hum. Correction, it was bound to happen, but the real comedy began with Harper. Now that Tristan was no longer a billionaire, with an unlimited budget, Harper's pure spiritual love was put to the ultimate test. Without his black card, Tristan could no longer book private rooms at 5-star restaurants, charter yachts, for weekend getaways, or buy her expensive vintage art supplies just because he had to move out of his luxury apartment and rent a modest one-bedroom place near the edge of campus. At first, Harper tried to play the role of the supportive artistic muse. She posted photos on her social media of them eating cheap takeout on the floor of his new cramped apartment, with captions like, "Simple moments are the most beautiful. Just me, him, and our dreams. Hashtag minimalist love." But social media likes don't pay for silk slip dresses. Within a month, the cracks began to show. Harper was a girl who got hundreds of dollars a day in allowance from her own parents, but she was used to Tristan funding her lavish lifestyle. She expected him to pay for her expensive organic groceries, her weekend spa trips, and her high-end gallery. Submissions, when Tristan strict. $3,000 allowance ran out halfway through. The month, Harper's delicate, sweet demeanor began to fray. I ran into them. Once at a local grocery store, I was standing in the checkout line holding a basket of meal prep containers when I heard a familiar, sharp voice arguing in the next aisle. Tristan, it's just $80. Harper was saying, her voice strained and frantic. It's organic Caldrest. Juice. I need it for my cleanse. Why are you being so cheap? Harper, I don't have $80 to throw away on juice. Tristan snapped, looking exhausted and disheveled. The polished golden boy. Luster was completely gone. He had dark circles under his eyes, and his clothes looked slightly wrinkled. My dad is auditing my accounts every week. If he sees an $80 charge at an organic boutique, he's going to lecture me for 3 hours. You've changed, Harper said, her lower lip trembling in a perfect imitation of betrayal. You used to be so generous. You used to care about my health. Now you're just obsessed with money. It's so ugly. I'm obsessed with money because I don't have any. Tristan groaned, running a hand through his messy hair. I paid for my groceries, picked up my bags, and walked past them with a polite nod. Tristan froze when he saw me. His eyes widened, a mixture of shame, regret, and shock washing over his face. He looked at my neat, professional slacks, my crisp white blouse, and the sharp, confident way I carried myself. I didn't say a word. I just offered a small, professional smile, the exact same smile I used to give him when he handed me a $30,000 gold chain and walked out into the cool autumn air. The final act of the drama unfolded during the spring graduation ceremony. It was a beautiful, crisp May morning. The university quad was filled with thousands of graduating students in black gowns, surrounded by proud families holding bouquets of flowers and popping champagne. I stood near the edge of the lawn, wearing my gown, holding my degree in one hand and a folder containing my official full-time employment contract from Harrison and Associates in the other. My starting salary was in the 6 figures with a guaranteed performance bonus. I had also just signed the papers to purchase my second investment property, a small duplex near the downtown area, funded entirely by my savings and the rental income from my condo. I was standing alone, looking at the crowd, feeling a deep, quiet sense of peace. Riley, I turned around. Tristan was standing there. He looked incredibly thin, his graduation gown hanging loosely on his frame. He didn't have the usual crowd of adoring frat brothers or wealthy friends around him. He was completely alone. Tristan, I said, my voice polite and even. Congratulations on graduating. He let out a hollow, bitter laugh. Yeah, thanks. I barely squeezed by. My dad had to hire a private tutor to sit with me for 10 hours a day just to make sure I passed my finals. He paused, his eyes scanning my face, looking for something. Anger, bitterness, or maybe the familiar, submissive bootlicker he used to know. But he found nothing, just a calm, professional pool of water. I saw your post on LinkedIn, he said quietly. Harrison and Associates, that's a huge deal. They usually only hire Ivy League grads with massive family connections. I don't have connections, I said. So I had to rely on my work ethic. Turns out, managing a trust fund baby's academic crisis is highly transferable to corporate wealth management. Tristan flinched, a flash of pain crossing his face. Really, I'm sorry. I raised an eyebrow. For what? For everything, he said, taking a step closer, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper. For the mountain? For the way I treated you? For Harper? I was such an idiot. She broke up with me last month. Oh, I said, though I already knew. Chloe had told me weeks ago that Harper had left Tristan for a junior vice president at a rival real estate firm, a guy who was 30 years older than her, but had a yacht in Monaco. She was a fraud, Riley, Tristan said, his eyes shining with unshed tears. She didn't care about my soul. She didn't care about art. The moment my dad cut my allowance, she started complaining about everything. She made me feel like a failure every single day. She only loved the version of me that had unlimited money. He reached out trying to grab my hand, but I stepped back smoothly, keeping my hands neatly folded in front of me. And you, Tristan asked, his voice trembling. Do you still hate me? I never hated you, Tristan, I said, my voice entirely soft, entirely honest. Hate is an emotional investment, and I don't invest my resources in things that don't yield a return. Then can we try again, he pleaded, looking at me with the same pathetic puppy dog eyes he had on the moped that freezing winter night. I'm changing, Riley. I'm learning how to manage my own life. I still have the condo. Wait, no, you have the condo. Do you still live there? Maybe we could. I don't know. Get a coffee. I looked at him, and for the first time I felt a genuine sense of gratitude toward him. He had been the catalyst. His wealth, his insecurity, and his arrogance had given me the leverage I needed to escape the cycle of poverty. He had handed me the keys to my freedom, thinking he was buying a doormat, only to realize he had funded his own replacement. Tristan, I said, offering him one last genuine smile. I still have the condo. I rented out 2 of the rooms to quiet, studious girls who pay their rent on time every month. The rental income pays my property taxes and funds my investment portfolio. Next month, I'm closing on my second property. Tristan stared at me, his jaw dropping slightly. He realized, with a sudden, crushing weight, that while he had been playing emotional games, I had been building an empire out of his scraps. You really only cared about the money, didn't you? He whispered, a broken, bitter laugh escaping his lips. Even now, it was always just a transaction to you. I looked him dead in the eye, my smile soft but completely unyielding. Tristan, people like me don't have the luxury of playing with emotions. When I was a kid, in the foster system, crying didn't put food on my plate. Being sweet didn't keep a roof over my head. Money never left me stranded on a dark mountain inn. The freezing wind, it never lied to me. It never used me as a rebound. And it never broke my heart. I took a step back, adjusting the folder containing my employment contract. So yes, I cared about the money. And thanks to you, I'll never have to worry about it again. I turned on my heel and walked away. The sun was shining brightly over the Campus, warming my face. Behind me, the noise of the graduation crowd faded into a distant hum. Ahead of me lay the city, sleek and towering, filled with endless opportunities, endless wealth, and a future that belonged entirely to me. My heels clicked sharply, rhythmically, against the concrete pavement. A clean, beautiful sound that sounded exactly like a cash register.